Hi, it's time for another verb of the day. Today's verb is dine. Let's take a look at some of the definitions or the ways that we use this verb. The first way you hear dine used is to mean to eat dinner. And a related way you might hear it used is to take someone to dinner. Okay? You should know that dine is a regular verb. To make the progressive form of this verb, I'm going to drop the E before I add ing to form dining. The past tense and participle forms of this verb can be made by just adding the letter D since this verb already ends in an E. Now the base verb dine ends in a voiced N sound. This means that the past tense and participle endings are going to make a D sound, and we're not going to add an extra syllable as we say it. It should sound like this: dined, dined. Now, there are actually a number of phrasal verbs connected to this verb, and we're going to focus our discussion today on these phrasal verbs. The first one you might encounter is to dine at. So generally, when someone uses this phrasal verb, they're talking about eating at some place. Many times it's going to be a restaurant, but generally it's a place other than one's own home. An example of this might be, we dined at the cutest cafe last weekend. This sentence is an example of the simple past tense. I'm talking about a completed action. And you can see that past tense ending there. Another phrasal verb you might encounter is dine in. This can have a couple different meanings. One way to use it is to mean to eat at one's home. So this is kind of the opposite of going to a restaurant. You say we're going to dine in, which could mean we're going to stay at home. An example of this might be, I don't feel like going out. Let's dine in. So here, L-E-T apostrophe S, let's, is one way people make a suggestion. Okay, so here, the speaker is suggesting to another friend, maybe a roommate or family member, it's too much work. It's too tiring to go out to a restaurant. I want to eat at home. Now, a second way you might hear dine in used is to mean to sit and eat in a restaurant. So here, restaurants may ask you this question about whether you plan to sit and have a meal in their restaurant instead of getting takeout, having them prepare food and then having you take it home to be eaten there. So an example of something you might hear someone say, are you dining in or getting takeout? So sometimes the staff at a restaurant, right? They might be deciding whether to give you menus and seat you in a particular area, or perhaps you're just going to order off to the side. Okay? Are you dining in is an example of the present progressive or present continuous, right? So we're talking about something happening now. Another phrasal verb, I should say, is dine off. So many times people use this to describe their ability to make a meal out of something, or perhaps make many meals out of something. An example of this might be, the family dined off the deer for weeks. Okay. I didn't grow up in a family that hunts, but I certainly know some people who have and are very much into that. So what this sentence is suggesting is someone maybe in a family, or perhaps it was a gift, killed a deer. The meat has been processed, and now they've been able to make many meals from this animal. Dined off in this sentence is another example of the simple past tense. Let's keep discussing some more phrasal verbs. Another one you might encounter is to dine on. When we use this, we're really just talking about eating something. An example of this might be, we'll dine on pasta this evening. So This is kind of maybe a fancy way someone might say to their guests at a dinner party. But will dine on here is an example of simple future. Another phrasal verb you might encounter is to dine out. Right? This is going to be the opposite of dine in that first meaning where we talked about eating food at home. So many times when we talk about dining out, we're talking about eating a meal at a restaurant or some other place that isn't your home. An example of this might be, they don't dine out very often. Here's an example of the simple present. We're describing a habit or a routine. So we're talking about some group of family or some group of individuals here that do not regularly eat at restaurants. The last phrasal verb we'll discuss today is to dine out on. And this phrasal verb is going to have a completely different meaning. So all of the ones we've been discussing before are connected to eating. This has nothing to do with eating, but people use it to talk about someone who is regularly telling some sort of story or sharing an interesting piece of information with friends. But the focus here is that this person telling the story, they just don't do it once, but this happens again and again. So an example of this might be, my family has been dining out on the story of a squirrel living in our basement. It cracks people up. So this is true of, I think, for maybe a little over a week when I was pretty young. We had a squirrel in our basement, and it was kind of some funny things happened with it. My parents love telling people this story, and so they have regularly entertained others with kind of the humorous things that happened while the squirrel was in our basement. Now, let's spend a few minutes looking at some words and phrases that are related to our verb dine. The first word we're going to look at is the noun diner. One way this noun gets used is to refer to a customer. Many times that suffix, that er, can be a person or a thing that, and we can connect back to our verb. So here, we're talking about a person who many times eats in a restaurant. An example of this might be, diners have loved this week's special. A second, less common way you might hear diner used is a shortened way to refer to a dining car on a train. So an example of this might be, the diner will serve from 4:30 to 7. Right? Maybe this is an announcement that is being made to passengers on a train. A third way the noun diner gets used is to refer to a small type of restaurant. Many times it's going to have long counters, it's going to have booths. Many say that it's been made to look like dining cars on a train. I think that might be how it's gotten its name. So an example of this might be, this diner serves lunch and dinner 7 days a week. Right? So many times a diner serves food pretty quickly, fairly inexpensively as well. And I think many people would say it has a lot of comfort food. Maybe not always the healthiest of things, but it can certainly be very tasty. Another word we should discuss is the adjective dine in. You might see this on signs at restaurants. So, what this means is relating to selling food and drinks that are going to be consumed. So things that will be eaten within the restaurant or on the premises. An example of this might be, this week's special is for dine-in customers only. So here, dine-in is describing which customers, right? This particular special is not available to someone who's getting takeout. we're going to talk about one phrase before we go, and that phrase is to wine and dine. And many times when people are using this, they're talking about trying to entertain other people, usually a fairly nice restaurant. So I want you to think kind of high quality food. Many times there can be alcoholic beverages. That's the wine piece. It doesn't have to include that. Many times when we're using this, we're wanting to impress the person or people that we are entertaining. An example of this might be, they're wining and dining the candidate this evening. Right? So sometimes that's part of certain job searches, especially for higher level positions. So there might be formal interviews during the day, and then at night, they take the candidate out for a very nice meal in hopes of impressing them and having the candidate also be strongly interested in a job at that particular organization. Thanks so much for watching today's video. I hope you have a great day.